I guess I should have known something was off months ago. Hindsight makes every red flag look like a goddamn neon billboard. But when you've been married for 8 years, when you've built a life with someone, it's easy to let the little things slide. You tell yourself that you're just being paranoid, that stress is making her act weird, that you're the problem. You don't want to believe that the woman you married, the woman you build a life with, could be lying straight to your face. But looking back now, the signs were always there, and I was just too stupid to see them. It started small. Madison, my wife, had never been one of those gym-obsessed women. She stayed in shape, sure, but she never cared much about workout classes, never had the patience for the yoga and green juice crowd. Then, out of nowhere, she started going to yoga 3 times a week. At first, I thought maybe she was just getting into something new. People change, right? But it was the way she acted about it that made my stomach twist. She'd never invite me. Not once. If I asked her what kind of yoga it was, she'd be vague. Oh, just regular yoga. If I asked her where the studio was, she'd say downtown, but never give me a name. Then there was her phone. We used to be the kind of couple who left their phones lying around without a second thought, but suddenly, she was glued to it like it held the nuclear codes. She'd flip it over when she set it on the table, and when it buzzed, she'd grab it fast, eyes darting like a cornered animal. The biggest red flag? The way she started treating me. If I so much as asked her about her day, she'd get defensive, like I was interrogating her. She stopped being affectionate. No more casual touches, no more inside jokes, no more spontaneous sex. At night, she'd roll over and pretend to be asleep before I even got into bed. She barely looked at me anymore, like I was a piece of furniture she was tired of seeing. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was a phase. But deep down, something felt wrong. Then, 2 weeks ago, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. She came home from yoga wearing different clothes than when she left. At first, I thought maybe she had spilled something on her leggings, but there were no stains, no explanation. When I casually mentioned it, she snapped at me. What? You don't think I can own more than one pair of workout clothes? She spat, her eyes sharp, like I had just accused her of murder. It was such an overreaction to such a simple comment that it made my stomach churn. I started paying attention after that. I'd note the days she went to yoga, how long she was gone, how she smelled when she got home. And that's when I really started to notice it. She never smelled like sweat. Never. No trace of that post-workout musk. No damp hair. No redness in her face. She looked pristine every time she walked through that door, like she had been somewhere air-conditioned, somewhere comfortable. Somewhere that wasn't a goddamn yoga studio. The moment I realized I couldn't ignore this anymore was last Friday. She came home late, nearly 10 p.m., and she was glowing. Not the kind of glow you get from a good stretch or a workout. The kind of glow you get from sex. She was flushed, smiling to herself in this dreamy way, like a woman who had been thoroughly, sinfully satisfied. I asked her how class was, and she barely looked at me when she muttered, "It was fine." She went straight to the shower, and I sat there, staring at the wall, feeling something inside me snap. I had to know. I had to find out the truth, even if it destroyed me. That night, after she fell asleep, I picked up her phone. It was locked, of course, but I had watched her enter her passcode enough times to take a guess. On the 3rd try, I got in. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the damn thing, but I forced myself to scroll through her messages. Nothing. No texts, no weird calls, no suspicious names. Either she was smarter than I gave her credit for, or she had another way of communicating. Then I had an idea. I checked her location history, and that's when my whole world shattered. She hadn't been going to a yoga studio. She hadn't even been downtown. Every single time she claimed she was at yoga, she had been at the same goddamn hotel. A mid-range place about 15 minutes away, nothing fancy, but discreet. My stomach twisted into knots as I scrolled through weeks of location history, same hotel, same times, over and over again. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake her up and demand to know the truth. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed more. I needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't weasel her way out of. So the next time she told me she was going to yoga, I followed her. I don't know what I expected to find that night. Some part of me, some desperate, delusional part, still hoped I was wrong. Maybe she really was going to yoga, and her phone was just glitching. Maybe there was some perfectly innocent explanation for why she kept ending up at the same hotel. Maybe I wasn't about to watch my entire marriage go up in flames. But deep down, I already knew the truth. She left around 6:30 p.m., yoga mat slung over her shoulder like some sick joke. I told her I might grab drinks with some coworkers after work, and she barely acknowledged it, just muttered, "Okay, have fun." She was too busy texting someone, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips. My gut twisted into 1,000 knots. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then grabbed my keys and followed. She took the usual route, straight to that hotel, pulling into the parking lot like she belonged there. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white as I watched her sit in her car for a moment, checking her phone. Then she got out, no yoga mat, no gym bag, just her purse. She adjusted her hair in the side mirror, smoothed out her shirt, and walked inside. I had two options. I could storm in right then, demand answers, cause a scene. Or I could wait, gather proof, and confront her when there was no way for her to lie her way out of it. I chose the second option, because at this point, I wanted to watch her lie. I wanted to hear the bullshit excuses spill out of her mouth before I slammed the truth in her face. So I waited. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. I was fuming, my heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. I knew she was upstairs with someone. I knew what they were doing. My wife was in a hotel room with another man, probably moaning his name, telling him all the things she used to whisper to me. I was shaking when I finally got out of the car. I walked inside like I belonged there, straight up to the front desk. The woman behind the counter barely glanced up from her computer. "I need to confirm the room number for my wife," I said, my voice steady, my hands anything but. She checked in under the name Madison Carter. The receptionist blinked, eyes flickering with something suspicion, maybe pity. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't give out guest information." I expected that. But I was ready. I pulled out my phone, pretending to scroll. "That's fine. I just need to know if she's using our credit card or her personal one." She told me she booked it under mine, but I don't see the charge. I let out an exasperated sigh, playing the role of the clueless husband. You know how wives are. She bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. She clicked a few keys, then nodded. She checked in under the name Jessica Lane. My stomach dropped. A fake name. She wasn't just meeting someone, she was covering her tracks. The receptionist looked like she regretted saying anything, but it was too late. I had what I needed. "Thanks," I said flatly, already walking toward the elevators. I had no idea what I was going to do when I got to that door. Burst in? Pound on it until she had no choice but to answer? I didn't even know which room it was, but I had a plan for that, too. I waited in the hallway, close enough to the elevator to see when someone came down, when she left her little rendezvous. I didn't have to wait long. At exactly 8:57 p.m., the elevator dinged, and my wife stepped out. She looked different, like she had been thoroughly fucked. Her makeup was smudged, her hair slightly messy, her clothes a little rumpled. She was still smiling to herself, still glowing in a way she never did around me anymore. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy on her phone, probably texting him. I let her take a few steps forward before I stepped out of the shadows. "Hey, babe." Her entire body froze. She looked up, eyes widening in pure, unfiltered terror. I had never seen her look at me like that before, not in 8 years of marriage. I took a slow step forward, watching her throat bob as she swallowed hard. She recovered quickly, too quickly, plastering a fake smile on her face. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was high, forced, fake. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, slipping my hands into my pockets to keep them from shaking. "You said you were at yoga." She laughed. Actually laughed, like I was the idiot here. I was. We had a special event here at the hotel. A yoga retreat. She was still lying. Even with all the evidence right in front of her, she was still trying to gaslight me. "Oh yeah." I tilted my head, eyes locked on hers. "Under the name Jessica Lane?" The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Then tried again. She shook her head. I was just. I stepped closer, voice calm, controlled. "Who is he, Madison?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice cracking at the edges. I almost laughed. I almost admired how committed she was to this performance. Almost. "You don't know what I'm talking about," I echoed. "You expect me to believe that you're here, at a hotel, under a fake name, looking like you just got railed, and you don't know what I'm talking about?" Her jaw clenched. She glanced around, like she was looking for an escape, like she thought she could somehow run from this. "You're crazy," she muttered, shaking her head. "You're actually crazy. You're stalking me now? You're tracking my phone? This is insane." She was deflecting. turning it around on me, making me the villain in this story. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. We're done, Madison. My voice was eerily steady, even as my heart felt like it was being crushed inside my chest. I'm not playing this game with you. Her eyes snapped back to mine, something frantic flickering behind them. Wait, what? You heard me, I said, stepping back. You want to fuck some random guy in a hotel? Fine, but you don't get to have me waiting at home while you do it. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, like she had actually convinced herself that she could keep this going, that she could keep feeding me lies, and I'd keep swallowing them. I turned and walked away, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the fool. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to sit in my car for a good 10 minutes before I could even put the key in the ignition. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. My entire body was flooded with adrenaline, anger, and a sickening kind of disbelief, even though I had already known, deep down, what I was going to find. Seeing it with my own eyes was different. Watching Madison step out of that elevator, all flushed and glowing, looking like she had just been fucked within an inch of her life, had done something to me. I thought maybe I would feel sadness, grief, some kind of deep, painful heartbreak, but all I felt was rage. A white-hot, burning rage that I could barely contain. Because she had looked me in the eye, seen that I knew the truth, and still tried to lie. She had laughed in my face, played dumb, twisted it around like I was the crazy one for catching her in the act. That was the part that made my blood boil the most. Not just the betrayal, but the fact that she had clearly never respected me in the first place. I finally started driving, but I didn't go straight home. I needed time to think, to let the reality of the situation settle before I stepped back into that house with her. I went to a bar instead, some hole-in-the-wall place on the other side of town where no one knew me. I ordered a whiskey neat, took a sip, and stared at the glass, trying to process what had just happened. 8 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to. 8 years of building a life together, only for her to throw it away like it meant nothing. And for what? Some cheap hotel fling? Some guy who clearly didn't give a damn about her if he was willing to sneak around like this? It made me sick to my stomach. I thought about all the nights she had come home late, all the times she had brushed me off when I tried to kiss her, all the times she had pulled away when I reached for her in bed. She had been so distant, so cold, and I had been too blind to see what was right in front of me. And the worst part? I had blamed myself. I had spent months thinking maybe I was the problem, that maybe I wasn't good enough anymore, that maybe I wasn't making her happy. Meanwhile, she was out there screwing someone else in a hotel room under a fake name. By the time I walked into the house, it was close to midnight. The place was dark except for the light in the living room, where Madison was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She had changed into her usual comfortable pajamas, playing the role of the innocent, devoted wife, as if she hadn't just spent the last few hours with another man. The second she saw me, she sprang up, her face twisted in anger. "Where the hell have you been?" she snapped. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. She was asking me where I had been. "Are you fucking serious?" I said, shaking my head. "You think you get to be mad at me right now?" Her eyes were blazing as she stepped closer, pointing a finger at me like she was about to launch into a full-blown attack. "You followed me, you stalked me, you violated my privacy. What the hell is wrong with you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had been caught red-handed, and yet she was still trying to twist this around on me. "You're unbelievable," I muttered, rubbing a hand over my face. "You cheated on me, Madison. I caught you. I saw you. And all you can do is scream at me for catching you." She scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was some dramatic idiot who was making a big deal out of nothing. "I didn't cheat on you," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're just jumping to conclusions because you're insecure and paranoid." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I wanted to stay calm, but she was making it impossible. "You walked into a hotel under a fake fucking name, Madison," I said through gritted teeth. "I saw you. I know what you're doing. You think I'm an idiot?" She didn't even flinch. She just folded her arms tighter, pursing her lips. "It wasn't what you think." I barked out a bitter laugh. "Oh yeah? So explain it to me. Tell me why you were there. Tell me why you needed a fake name. Tell me why you looked like you just had the best sex of your life when you walked out of that elevator." She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Then, she did what she always did. She doubled down on the lies. "It was work," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. My boss asked me to meet a client there, and I didn't want to use my real name in case it was a sketchy situation. I stared at her in disbelief. That was the best she could come up with? Oh, come on, I snapped. A client meeting? At a hotel room? You expect me to believe that? Her nostrils flared. It wasn't in a room, it was in the bar, she shot back. And I only went up to her room because I needed to use the restroom, and the lobby ones were disgusting. You're making this into something it's not. I couldn't take it anymore. I had given her a chance, multiple chances, to come clean, and she had just kept feeding me bullshit. You're a fucking liar, I said, my voice dangerously low. You think I don't know? I checked your location history, Madison. I know this wasn't the first time. I know you've been doing this for weeks, months, probably. So stop fucking lying to me. For the first time, something cracked in her expression. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her jaw tightening. You tracked me, she hissed. You actually went through my phone and tracked me? That's psychotic. I laughed bitterly. Yeah? Well, you being a cheating piece of shit kind of forced my hand, didn't it? She exhaled sharply, her eyes darting around the room like she was trying to find an escape. I don't know what you think you saw, but I didn't cheat on you, she said finally, her voice softer now, trying a different angle. I love you, okay? I would never do that to you. I couldn't take it anymore. The sheer audacity of her standing there, looking me in the eye, and still trying to manipulate me like I was some clueless idiot who would just roll over and accept it, it made me sick. I'm done, I said flatly. I'm done, Madison. I'm not playing this game with you anymore. Her eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't actually expected me to say it. Wait, she said, stepping closer, reaching for my hand. We don't have to. I pulled away before she could touch me. We do, I said firmly. You made that choice when you decided to fuck someone else behind my back. So congratulations, Madison. You don't have to pretend to be my wife anymore. Go be Jessica Lange full-time. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely rattled. But I didn't care. I turned and walked away, straight to the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. She pounded on it a few minutes later, begging me to come out, trying to backpedal, but I ignored her. I had heard enough. I wasn't letting her weasel her way out of this. She had made her choice. And now, I was making mine. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that I thought I might snap it in half. My head was spinning, replaying the look on Madison's face over and over again, first, the shock, then the panic, and finally, the quick shift into anger, like I was the problem here. Like I was the one who had done something wrong. The sheer fucking audacity of it all. I had walked into that hotel fully expecting her to try and deny things, but I hadn't expected her to be so brazen about it. There was no shame, no regret, no apology, just lie after lie, piled on top of each other, as if she actually believed that if she kept saying them enough times, they'd somehow become the truth. That was what made my blood boil more than anything else, not just the fact that she had cheated, but the fact that she had looked me in the eye, knowing she had been caught red-handed, and still tried to manipulate me into believing I was the bad guy. I ended up at some rundown bar on the other side of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and everyone's got their own problems. I ordered a whiskey neat and just sat there, staring at the glass, feeling the sick, twisting sensation in my gut. 8 years of marriage, and this was where we ended up. 8 years of building a life together, of thinking we were a team, of trusting her, only for her to throw it all away like it was nothing. And the worst part? I had felt it happening for months. I had known something was off, and yet I had ignored every red flag, made excuse after excuse for her, let her gaslight me into believing I was just being paranoid. I had actually convinced myself that I was the problem, that I wasn't doing enough, that maybe she was pulling away because of something I had done. Meanwhile, she was sneaking off to a fucking hotel room under a fake name to get her brains fucked out by another man. I clenched my jaw so tightly that I felt my teeth grinding together, took another sip of whiskey, and forced myself to breathe through the rage. By the time I finally drove home, it was almost midnight. The house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room, casting long shadows over the furniture. And there she was, Madison, sitting on the couch, arms crossed, her foot tapping against the floor impatiently. She was waiting for me. The second I walked through the door, she shot up, her face twisted in anger. Where the hell have you been? She demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory, like I was some delinquent husband coming home late from a night of debauchery. I almost laughed at the irony. She was asking me where I had been? She, who had just walked out of a hotel room where she had been screwing someone else. The hypocrisy was so fucking staggering that for a moment, I couldn't even speak. I just stared at her, my mind trying to comprehend how a person could be this delusional. Then, finally, I let out a sharp, bitter laugh and shook my head. Are you serious right now? I said, my voice dangerously calm. You think you get to be mad at me? She scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. Oh, don't even start, she snapped. You followed me, you tracked me like some crazy stalker, and now you're trying to act like I'm the bad guy? What the fuck is wrong with you? I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm, but it was getting harder by the second. I tracked you because you've been lying to me, I said, my voice sharp but steady. You've been sneaking around for months, Madison. I caught you. I saw you. And all you can do is stand here and scream at me for catching you. She folded her arms tighter, her body tensing. I didn't cheat on you, she spat, her eyes narrowing. You're jumping to conclusions because you're paranoid and insecure. A slow, cold rage settled in my chest. Even now, even after everything, she was still sticking to this bullshit. You walked into a hotel under a fake name, I said, stepping closer. I saw you. I know you've been going there for weeks. Are you really going to stand there and keep lying to my face? She flinched, just for a second, but then she squared her shoulders and lifted her chin defiantly. It wasn't what you think, she said, her voice a little too high, a little too forced. I barked out a humorless laugh. Oh, really? I said. Then please, enlighten me. Tell me why you've been going to the same hotel 3 times a week, under a fake fucking name, and walking out looking like you just had the best sex of your life. She hesitated, just for a second, but then, like clockwork, the lies kept coming. It was work, she said, her voice calmer now, like she actually believed she could smooth this over. My boss asked me to meet a client there, and I didn't want to use my real name in case it was a sketchy situation. I just stared at her, stunned at how shameless she was. You expect me to believe that? I said, shaking my head. A client meeting? At a fucking hotel room? Are you even trying anymore? She threw her hands up. It wasn't in a room. It was in the bar, she snapped. And I only went upstairs because I needed to use the restroom, and the ones in the lobby were disgusting. Jesus, you're making this into something it's not. I could feel my blood pressure skyrocketing. She wasn't even trying to be convincing anymore. She was just throwing out whatever half-assed excuse popped into her head and hoping I was dumb enough to buy it. You're a fucking liar, I said, my voice dangerously low. You think I don't know? I checked your location history, Madison. I know this wasn't the first time. I know you've been doing this for months. So stop fucking lying to me. For the first time, something flickered in her expression, panic, maybe, or realization that she had run out of ways to wriggle out of this. Her lips parted slightly, her jaw tightening, but she recovered quickly, doubling down like she always did. You tracked me, she hissed. You actually spied on me? That's insane. That's abusive. I laughed bitterly. Yeah? Well, you being a cheating piece of shit kind of forced my hand, didn't it? She exhaled sharply, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an escape. I don't know what you think you saw, but I didn't cheat on you, she said finally, her voice softer now, trying a different angle. I love you, okay? I would never do that to you. I stared at her, feeling absolutely nothing anymore. Not sadness, not anger, just exhaustion. I'm done, I said flatly. I'm done, Madison. I'm not playing this game with you anymore. Her eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't actually expected me to say it. Wait, she said, stepping closer, reaching for my hand. We don't have to. I pulled away before she could touch me. We do, I said. You made that choice when you decided to fuck someone else behind my back. Her mouth opened, then closed, but I didn't care. I turned and walked away, straight to the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. She pounded on it a few minutes later, begging me to come out, but I ignored her. I was done listening. She had made her choice. And now, I was making mine. The pounding on the door didn't stop for a while. Madison was on the other side, her voice oscillating between anger, desperation, and faux concern, trying to get me to come out and talk. At first, it was accusations, how I was being ridiculous, how I was throwing away our marriage over nothing, how I was the one acting crazy. When I didn't respond, she switched to pleading, her voice softer, trying to coax me with apologies that didn't sound the least bit genuine. And when that didn't work, she got furious again, slamming her fist against the door, muttering curses under her breath, calling me an asshole. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands, feeling an emptiness settle over me that I didn't know how to process. I always thought if this moment ever came, if I ever caught my wife cheating, I'd be a mess. I'd be crying, screaming, demanding answers. But I wasn't. I felt nothing but cold, unwavering certainty. This was the end, and there was nothing she could do to change that. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, listening to her move around the house, probably trying to figure out how to spin this, how to salvage whatever illusion she thought she could still maintain. I heard her open and close drawers, move things around, even pause outside the bedroom door a few times as if she was debating knocking again. But eventually, everything went silent. She had gone to bed, or at least pretended to. I stared at the ceiling, my mind running through every single moment over the past few months, every suspicious excuse, every cold shoulder, every little moment that should have tipped me off sooner. The pieces all clicked together now, forming a picture so clear I felt like an idiot for ever missing it in the first place. The yoga classes, the late nights, the way she pulled away when I touched her, the way she avoided my eyes whenever I asked about her day. She had been gone for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to see it. By the time morning came, I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to be one of those men who begged, who tried to salvage something broken beyond repair. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she had any say in what happened next. I got up, took a long shower, and when I stepped out of the bedroom, Madison was already waiting for me in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a mug of coffee clutched between her hands. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. She did this to herself. The second she saw me, she straightened up, pressing her lips together like she had been rehearsing what she was about to say. "Look," she started, her voice carefully measured, like she was trying to sound reasonable. "Last night was insane, and I think we both need to just take a breath before we make any decisions we can't take back." I didn't even sit down. I just leaned against the counter, arms crossed over my chest. "I've already made mine," I said flatly. Her face twitched, her fingers tightening around the mug. "You're seriously just going to throw everything away?" she said, a little edge creeping into her voice. "Over a misunderstanding?" I almost laughed. She was still trying, still hoping she could spin this into something less than what it was. "You didn't just cheat, Madison," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You lied. Over and over again. Even when you got caught. And I'm not going to spend another second with someone who looks me in the eye and treats me like a fucking idiot." She scoffed, pushing her chair back as she stood up, arms flailing. "Oh, please. Like you're so perfect? Like you've never lied to me about anything? Don't act like you're some goddamn saint, Ethan." That was her last card to play deflection. Trying to drag me down with her, make this my fault somehow. I just shook my head. "I might not be perfect, but I never disrespected you like this," I said. "And I'm not going to stand here and argue with you about something we both know is true." She stared at me, her chest rising and falling quickly, eyes darting around like she was scrambling for something, anything, to say that would change my mind. But there was nothing left. She knew it. And for the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely scared. Because she realized she had lost. The rest of the conversation was short and to the point. I told her I wanted a divorce. She tried to protest, tried to tell me that we should talk about it. But I wasn't interested in talking. I had spent the last few months talking myself into believing she was still the woman I had married, and I wasn't going to waste another second pretending. I told her I'd be moving out that week, and that I expected her to start packing her things too, because there was no way in hell we were going to keep living under the same roof. That was when she got nasty. The pleading turned into venom, the sadness turned into insults. She accused me of overreacting, of being petty, of ruining our marriage over one mistake. I just let her rant. Let her throw her little tantrum. Nothing she said mattered anymore. She had already lost me, and she knew it. I spent the next few days packing my things, arranging to stay with a friend until I could get my own place. Madison barely spoke to me, except for the occasional passive-aggressive remark about how I was being dramatic and making a huge mistake. She still thought there was some way to undo this, like I would suddenly wake up and decide that I could just forget what she had done. But the thing about betrayal is that once you see it, once you feel it, there's no going back. Something breaks inside you, something fundamental, and no amount of apologies or excuses can put it back together. The day I left, she didn't say a word. She just stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching me load the last of my bags into the car. There was no grand goodbye, no dramatic last-minute confession, just silence. And honestly, that was fine with me. I drove away without looking back, without a single ounce of doubt in my mind that I was making the right choice. In the weeks that followed, she tried to reach out a few times, Texts that started with fake concern. I just want to know if you're okay, and slowly turned into desperate attempts to get a reaction from me. I ignored them all. She had made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. Looking back, I wish I had seen the signs sooner, but I don't blame myself anymore. People like Madison, people who can lie so easily, so effortlessly, are masters at manipulation. They make you question yourself, make you doubt what's right in front of you. But once the mask slips, once the truth is laid bare, you see them for what they really are. And the only thing left to do is walk away. So that's exactly what I did. And I haven't regretted it for a single second.